Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for spending your Thursday morning with us here at Coffee and Quality. So glad you're here with us today for this topic, our last one for 2021. Really excited to spend this next 90 minutes together. So if you haven't already, I probably do sound like a broken record by this time. Please sign into the chat with your name and agency. Helps us kind of keep that in check right there. So we're going to keep moving forward. As always, if you're new to Coffee and Quality, welcome. So glad you're joining us. And if you've been to Coffee and Quality before, welcome back. Glad you came. Glad you're here. Just as a reminder, we have some simple ground rules for our Coffee and Qualities. This is a safe space to learn and share. So please come with an open mind and, really respect one another's opinions and perspectives. And your role is to participate, share your knowledge, your experience, your opinion. Always great to hear from everyone, whether that's unmuting and sharing aloud or sharing in the chat. Always want to make sure that you have that avenue to do so. And then as this is a virtual space, sometimes there will be opportunity to share aloud. We maybe will ask for some input from folks, but it's always an invitation, not an obligation. So, please no pressure. Again, always a safe space in Coffee and Quality. So before we kind of dive into our presentations today, I do have two announcements. So if you have not joined our Coffee and Quality Teams channel, now is your opportunity. So United Way has a partner account for we have a Teams account for all of our partners. We have quite a few channels, and one of those channels is Coffee and Quality. So that's where we share the recording from today. We'll share our materials. We also post resources, other events kind of coming up related to data evaluation and continuous quality improvement. But we also have a general channel where people are always posting different referrals, different recommendations, all kinds of things there. And we also have a COVID-19 channel. So we have several that are public, and then we do have some private channels. Like, for example, our Thrive Collaborative has a private channel. So please, if you have any questions or you're not on that Teams channel and you want to be, it's the place to be. I tell you what, you can join through, just send me an email and I'll make sure you get linked into the team. In addition, I'm very excited to share that we have our next Coffee and Quality Learning Cohort opportunity coming up. So if you haven't heard of it, Coffee and Quality Learning Cohort is designed as a community of practice to improve professional competencies centered around a topic. And so that topic is centered around data evaluation and continuous quality improvement. And our learning cohort does a deep dive into data visualization and storytelling with data. So we're now coming into our third learning cohort. The cohort is comprised of a small group of 10 to 12 individuals that meet over 3 months. And so this group will meet over January, February, and March. And each of the learning cohorts have an opportunity to learn and practice storytelling with data through data visualization. And then I will share the link to the overview and the application in the chat here in a moment, but the application will be released today and it'll be due December 6th at 5 p.m. And the sessions will start in January. And in the overview, it gives you the calendar and kind of the time commitment and all that. So you know what you're getting yourself into. But again, this is our third cohort and they've, really haven't learned a lot throughout their time together, and then it continues. They meet quarterly through huddles, and so to continue that knowledge and continue that practice of storytelling with data through data visualization. So we hope that you'll consider applying, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions about that. Alrighty, so with that, I do want to kind of shift into our presentation, but I'm not 100% sure if Luis has joined in yet.
Luis is here, yeah.
Oh, he's here, great. Okay, wonderful. The waiting room was open and fast, so I was not sure. Alrighty, so wonderful, welcome. So we're going to shift into our presentation to now we have an amazing group that's come together to share, really centered around the highlights from the 2021 State of Housing in Harris County and Houston report. And then we'll also explore their State of Housing dashboard created by Kinder Institute. Afterward, we'll hear from 3 agencies, so Avenue CDC, Covenant Community Capital, and Easter Seals, on how their housing programs are using data. So today we have Luis and Katie from Kinder Institute. So Luis is an urban and region planning professional dedicated to fostering more equitable and sustainable communities. He leads the policy research team at the Kinder Institute for Urban Research, supporting communities with research at the intersection of planning, design, and urban economics. He also serves as the director-elect of Houston APA and as board member of Blueprint Houston. And then Katie, she manages the Community Bridges program and the Kinder Houston Community Data Connections program at the Kinder Institute for Urban Research. She facilitates community engagement efforts, builds relationships with partner organizations and clients, and monitors research and data services requests. So I'd like to hand it over to them, to their team, for their presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. It's wonderful to be here. Can you all hear me very well? Good. I was having a little bit of some connection issues just a few minutes ago, and glad it all got resolved. But we're here and we're excited to present to you. I think many of you might be familiar with the report. It's the 2021 State of Housing in Harris County and Houston that we're going to be presenting today. Some of you have probably seen the results, but if you're not, this will be a really good introduction to it, and we hope it leads to a great discussion after we share some of the presentation and the demo as well. I think the demo, it will be very important so you all can see how you might look at some of this information and look at a neighborhood level to be able to glean some of the housing statistics that we've been able to compile and put together for folks. So can everyone see my screen here? Okay.
Yes, looks great.
Looks like it's working. All right, great. So really, I mean, this is what we're going to cover today. Is we'll do a brief presentation over the report's major findings. There's a whole lot more in the report that I would invite you all to take a look at, but we're going to just kind of hit on some of the high notes here from the study. There's also again the dashboard demo, which we'll do, and then we want to have a good opening up the conversation for Q&A and share a couple of other opportunities for housing that are also coming up that Kinder is involved with, that we hope you all will keep your eye out for. Really, I'm going to start off with the purpose of the report. So we are really focused on, in conjunction with Wells Fargo, who is our sponsor in this project, is really starting to provide a baseline of housing data across a number of different aspects in housing, and tracking this over time as well. We'll build up and cultivate some really standard and universal housing statistics that we can all use. It's really meant to inform policy, development, and future research. And our goal again here is to really democratize data and make it accessible to folks. And that's where the dashboard comes in too, and looking at this from at a neighborhood level, not just the overarching county and city statistics. And we're also really open to feedback. So however we feel folks that feel this might be more useful in the work and the everyday stuff that you all are doing, we always welcome input, and either through Katie or I, and I'll have our contact info at the end so you all can share thoughts that might be helpful in your work. And so you can go to datahouston.org. There is a way to get into the dashboard as well through there. This is just a quick snapshot of that. You can also download all of the data. So you can do two things with it. You can do an interactive aspect of it and just kind of fiddle with it and see what's happening in different neighborhoods. Or you can just go straight to our UDP, or our Urban Data Platform website, and type in state of housing, and you can download, I believe we have over 250 data sets in there, some of them which didn't even make the report, which we did track, but there's a lot of data in there, and I would encourage you all to go in and download if you're ever interested. It's really important that when we talk about housing, we've undergone a lot in the last few years, and I think we're still learning a lot of what has transpired with the pandemic and a lot of these major events like Uri that we've lived through, and a lot of the hurricanes that we've had. But I pulled this from the Kinder Houston area survey because I think we've also, we do a lot more work than just the study, and the Kinder Houston area survey, as you all know, is is our flagship program here at Kinder, but we've also been tracking just how folks have had difficulty in paying for housing in the last 12 months. And I think it's just important that we acknowledge that this is the burden, the housing impact isn't something that's spread equally in our community. We have to acknowledge who's being hurt the most and understand where that's happening as well. So we see that primarily Black and Hispanic residents in the county have been affected or have had serious problems in paying for housing in the last year. So this is helpful to know. Almost a third of all households countywide have had housing problems, and we'll see some of the eviction statistics as well that I think will help tell a little bit of that narrative. And then I think when we found some interesting statistics, we weren't really trying to look at this, but because it's really hard to glean, but we found some really interesting numbers on overcrowding that concerned us from 2018 to 2019 in the census. There was almost a 25% spike in what is considered severely overcrowded households, and that is when there's more than 1.51 persons in a room within a given home. And this number was kind of increasing at a glacial pace in the last decade. But between 2018 and 2019, just as we were heading into the pandemic, there was a precipitous spike in it. And we hypothesize that it's mainly connected to the growing affordable housing crisis that we have. We at Kinder have also been working on the county's housing study, and I don't have any statistics to show you there because that hasn't been presented to Commissioner's Court yet. But what we do know from a lot of that data that we'll be releasing on November the 9th is that we just know that the affordable housing shortage for households who earn under $20,000 a year, or about 30% of the median income in the county, is a very dire situation. And so a lot of folks who are struggling to pay for housing under 30% AMI or overcrowding. And then we kind of mapped it just to see, all right, where is this severely crowded rental housing stock? And you see in the dark blue shades here of this map on the left that we provided for the report, it's mainly happening in the Gulfton Sharpstown area, in Greens Point, in some southern parts along the I-45 corridor near Hobby Airport, and even a little bit closer to Gulf Gate as well. And generally, we've seen that this is in areas that when we just took a glance at where the 2020 spike of COVID positivity rates were highest, there were some interesting overlays on this. Like, so it's hard for us to make a direct connection right now because we haven't done a profound statistical analysis on this, but there were some very interesting overlaps between where COVID was highest in 2020, when in the 2020 peak in Houston, and where the severely crowded rental housing is. And so one thing that we learned a lot in 2020 was there was all this talk about cities and urban density being kind of this, this kind of area that was a host for COVID. And I think while some of that is true, I think what research has actually found is that it's actually more embedded in, how many generations are under a household, right? How many essential workers are in a household, and and the severely crowded rental housing stock as well. So those are interesting numbers to keep track of going into the long term. Some of the major things from this year's reports is that what's made it very clear is that there's two different housing realities, one for owners and one for renters in our region. The differences between the city and the county are starting to become a lot more pronounced in both in the household dynamics specifically, and I'm going to show you some numbers on that shortly. But what I mean by the differences between city and county is what's occurring within Houston and what's occurring countywide. We're starting to see different trends or different kind of aspects to how people are using housing. And then the next disaster is a major threat to the housing stability and our urban resilience. And so we've seen, we just know that there still continues to be a lot of vulnerability in our community, and we're very exposed to future events, which we've seen over and over again. And it's concerning to us that we're going to have to live through more of this. And when we talk about two housing realities, so what does this mean? So home ownership is becoming out of reach for renters. The graphic has a lot of bars here, but the one that I want you to focus on more is these two right here in the middle, close to the middle, which is this is the rental affordability gap. If you are a median renter, you can afford, in 2019, you could afford a home that cost you $135,000 a year if it was affordable at 30% of your income, right? But the median sales price of homes in Harris County is closer to $240,000 a year. And this was pre-pandemic, right? That affordability gap is what we're calling the affordability gap. It's a $95,000 affordability gap. And that's quite a stark difference. The one other aspect of this is when we looked at this going back 10 years, this gap used to only be $30,000 in 2010, and it's grown exponentially from $30,000 to $95,000 in the last decade. And so what that's really telling us is that wages aren't keeping up with the cost of housing. The cost of housing is growing exponentially, and wages are for our renter population are not advancing. They're being outpaced, right, by that. There's some different numbers here. You can see homeowners countywide have actually done quite well. The median sales price for them is actually not a gap. It's actually it's not a deficit. It's a surplus. So they're able to afford. In theory, you're able to afford, if you're a homeowner, a home. If you earn the median income and you're a homeowner, you're doing quite well. Or at least prior to the pandemic, you had options. And then the number in Houston for renters is actually really, really stark. The gap is $140,000, and that just has to do with the fact that a lot of the homes that are selling in the Houston area, within the city of Houston, they're just land is much more expensive, and home ownership opportunities is just costlier in Houston than the countywide number. But renters right now are also just having a difficult time paying the homes that they already live in. So while the affordability gap is growing and home ownership is becoming more elusive, we're also just seeing that if you're a renter right now, you just don't have a chance to even save money, because more than half of our renters in Harris County are cost burdened. 51% of all county residents are paying more than 30% of their income on housing. And that's very troubling when you look at that. So we're not that, when you hear a lot of the comparisons about Houston being an affordable place, and you put that statistic against some of the other cities and regions in this nation, we're not doing very, very differently from some of those that get a lot of criticism for being unaffordable, right? So again, owners are still doing quite well in this realm, and that is a positive, but renters are really struggling. But we're also seeing that home ownership is becoming more elusive, and so we're kind of having these diverging paths is kind of what we're seeing for owners and renters. And when you look a little bit closer at cost burden, we broke this up by income to see, right, on the income scale, where are renters, how cost burden are our renters, right? And so not surprisingly, those that are earning under $20,000, an overwhelming majority of them, almost 90%, and in both income brackets that are under $20,000, are paying more than 50% on housing. That they're considered severely cost burdened. That is the orange bar, right? But then another significant chunk of them are paying between 30 and 50, so they're considered cost burdened, and very little of them are non-cost burdened, right? That's really to no surprise. But then you start sliding up in the income scale, and so $35,000 to $49,000, that's about 60 to 80% of area median income for the county, not for the metropolitan area, but for Harris County. And that number is also above 50%. So above 50% of our renters who are earning between 60 and 80% of the county's median income are cost burdened. This isn't a problem that's just confined to low-income residents. It's starting to creep in to a lot of our middle-income workforce housing folks. And this is really also amplified what we've seen with evictions. Harris County and Houston, while there have been some notable efforts on providing rent relief, we haven't had quite the policy interventions that other places, namely like Austin, have within Texas. And we have seen evictions just be a really staggering number. But even prior to the pandemic, there was 1 in every 11 rental households had an eviction filing on their door in Harris County. And 1 out of every 25 actually got evicted. And so if you go down into an apartment complex, 1 in every 11 households had an eviction notice on their door. That's quite dramatic, and that we're one of the national leaders in evictions. Nothing to be proud of. But the other aspect here that's very important is that this isn't confined to the central core of the city. I think a lot of folks might conflate evictions with urban and dense areas, but what we're seeing is that this problem is spread throughout the county, and it's specifically becoming a very, what we call inner suburban communities along the Beltway, where we see a lot of this occurring. So a lot in southwest areas of Houston, Westwood, Alief, parts of Gulfton, but we're also seeing a lot in Pasadena, in Baytown, and in the Greenspoint and south of Spring areas as well. So this is the geography of this quite shocked us when we started looking at this, and maybe maybe it shocked us, but also it's not that surprising because there is what we consider a lot of naturally occurring affordable housing in those areas. We have a lot of aging housing stock, a lot of aging garden apartments, and when we think about data on folks who are cost burdened, we are also just asking ourselves, well, why don't we know more about landlords, right? Because obviously somebody's housing our rental population, and what are their kind of financial circumstances? What are what are they confronting that might be either making the problem worse or that could improve the situation for renters? And so landlord data is just very limited to find. And that's one of the big problems I think a lot of housing policy folks are struggling with across the country. But when we did look a little bit at where there was a really interesting graphic here on the right where we saw where a lot of the foreclosures were occurring and where a lot of what we call what are known as REITs or real estate investment trusts, where they bought up properties. And so there's kind of this situation here where we're seeing a lot of where the foreclosures are happening, they're being bought up by REITs, and they're becoming, in many cases, single family rentals, which we don't really know a lot about as much as our multifamily rental stock. And so this might be a problem we try to explore more in the future to learn a whole lot more about how our single family rental stock is handling what's occurring there, because that's becoming a bigger picture here in our rental stock. In terms of the population dynamics that I spoke about earlier, between 2018 and 2019, we saw a growth of 30,000 households in the city of Houston, but a decline of 9,000 residents in the census. And over the long term, the city of Houston has actually been gaining population in the last decade. But we did see an anomaly here, which is from 18 to 19, the city actually lost almost 10,000 residents in population, even though, again, it gained 30,000 more households. That's a little counterintuitive, but what's happening is that we're seeing a larger growth of small households, like one-person households in the city, particularly, and a little bit of an exodus of larger households as well. There's more data in our report, but there were some very interesting findings around even the ethnicity and race of folks who are leaving the city. I think that folks might find that interesting. We saw an exodus of the Asian population from Houston, notably, and a little bit of also African Americans also. So those are interesting figures to keep track of over the long term as well. And then when you look a little closer at the families and living arrangements, when we talk about the size of the composition here, this bar chart on the bottom shows you Houston from 2018 to 2019, and this one on top shows you Harris County, where we saw the biggest gains in Houston was there was this situation here in this orange bar chart, which is the total number of households living alone, right? So that was it's about 26,000 households that were gained in the city folks who are living alone. And that's what I was speaking to of the size of households. And a little bit of an increase in total number of married couple families, but they're being way outnumbered by folks living alone, and then also just smaller households of unrelated non-family occupants. Whereas in the county, we're kind of just seeing growth in every one of these different groups. And stepping a little bit further back, the map on the left is median household income. You can kind of see the arrow here, pretty well defined, but the areas in blue have a lot higher income, and the areas in orange, yellow are median income, and then you start going into the gray, that's lower income communities. And you know, we also just observe, this is no surprise to folks, but where subsidized housing is included. So this is a lot of our light tech on the map on the right, and a lot of our project 8, not the vouchers, but the tenant-based housing. A lot of the subsidized housing that we have in the city is primarily, we're still seeing these patterns of racial segregation. Of course, this has been going on for a while. This isn't anything new. And this map on the right is where is this drive to qualify situation. So a lot of where are the FHA loan, which is the most common loan accessible to folks who are moving from a rental condition to a homeownership or first-time homeowners. A lot of our FHA loans are primarily concentrated way out in the periphery along the Beltway and on the eastern portions of the county, and or very far out on the western parts of Harris County. When we look at flooding and housing too, and our resilience here, there are about 1 in 4 homes that are located in the floodplain, and I haven't actually revised this based on the new flood maps that were done. We haven't gone back to analyze this, but this is a big statistic here for Harris County and Houston. I think folks have probably seen this across numerous times, but this represents nearly $30 billion worth of residential property, and this is a significant vulnerability for our tax base and also for intergenerational wealth, as folks who have moved into some housing in the floodplains might have their nest egg might be at risk right on the next storm. And that is a big concern because we also have some statistics on looking at who has flood insurance and who does not. And we have very little flood insurance. I think it's hard to pin it down within the floodplain, but what we do know about flood insurance is that there is, I think there's about 1 policy of flood insurance for every 4 homes in the floodplain. And so that we're just very underinsured as well. And this is just a map of the floodplains in Harris County, and overlaid with our building footprints in orange. You can see we still have a lot of vulnerable housing here. We've also been doing some recent work on looking at the impacts of Winter Storm Uri. There will be a forthcoming report by Harris County on this. I don't have a publication date yet because the county hasn't announced when they will publish this. We actually just turned it in, so we're determining a date for this. But the map that you see here is unemployment insurance claims, and where we really saw a spike in unemployment insurance during the pandemic. You can see a lot of our northeastern Harris County, parts of northeastern Harris County and northeastern parts of the city of Houston. We see some parts of Southwest, like the West Oaks, Eldridge area, West Chase, and then also Acres Homes, Sunnyside, and parts of Pasadena, but further up north to near Greens Point. We also then looked at where a lot of what is FEMA's individual and homeowner assistance program funding went. And so what you see on the map here is the intensity of where the IHP funding was at. And the areas in red had the highest amount of FEMA IHP dispersals. This is what we see is a lot of this is from Uri, by the way, sorry. And so from Uri, we see that areas like in Bear Creek, which is just west of the Exon Barker Reservoir, parts of Mission Bend in Southwest, Harris County, and then parts of Northeast Houston, like Cashmere Gardens and Trinity Gardens and Acres Homes, have the highest significance of FEMA IHP assistance. But then what you see outlined in this blue, these were some other communities that had very high damage scores based on FEMA assessments, but funding was very limited. So there's a disconnect here in terms of there's a few communities that saw, again, a lot of damage, but not a lot of funding. And these are areas that we called out for the county as a place so they can focus in and do a little bit more concerted effort to figure out why there's a disconnect between funding and damage. And that includes close to Jersey Village, here on Highway 6 and 290. Jersey Village is right here, actually. And then just north of Greens Point, it's an area considered, I think it's called Cypress Forest, and southern parts of Spring. And then West Chase and the very close to the Energy Corridor, just south of that, West Oaks area. And then we also started to we did this compounding damages. So we wanted to look at what neighborhoods and what zip codes have been in the top, have been the most damaged based on Hurricane Harvey IHP funding, based on Winter Storm Uri IHP funding, and unemployment during the pandemic. So it's really combining, again, Hurricane Harvey, Uri, and the pandemic to see what neighborhoods have been hit the hardest in the last few years. And you can see them labeled here on the map. See, a lot of the ones that I've already mentioned are here. And that's overlaid on this, on the CDC's Social Vulnerability Index, which is in the yellow to red spectrum. So the darker the red, the more socially, economically vulnerable the population. And not a lot of surprises here. There are some that are not as socially, economically vulnerable, like in West Chase and Eldridge, West Oaks, that have been hit repeatedly, and areas that, like Trinity Gardens, Cashmere Gardens, they're really intense in the CDC's index, but also have been hit repeatedly. And so this is really meant to inform the county in terms of their efforts on where is this compounding damage happening, but also how do you consider when you have limited resources, how do you start prioritizing this, right? So compounding damages with the CDC's index really does that. So please keep an eye out for that report. We will look to publish it hopefully before the end of the year. We're going to slide into the demo, but before we do that, I also want to tell you all that November 9th, the Kinder Institute is presenting to Commissioner's Court on the My Home is Here. It's Harris County's first ever housing study. It's a housing needs study and a 10-year strategy. And we invite you all to check it out. We will publish it. There will be a blog post through our Kinder Urban Edge blog, and we would hope that you all can take a look. It's quite informative and tells us a lot of information about some of what you saw today, but there's going to be a lot more looking at the next 10 years as well. So now, Katie, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so you can do a quick demo and show us how this can be applied at a neighborhood level.
Yes. Okay. So can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, so like we said, this is a tool that we released in conjunction with our State of Housing report. It's really meant to kind of give you the opportunity to zoom in on some of this housing data at the neighborhood level. So we know that, many of the folks we work with out in the region are kind of community-based organizations who might have a specific interest in particular communities or neighborhoods. And this is a tool that you might be able to use to kind of get a sense for the housing dynamics at a much more local level. So I'm just going to kind of quickly walk through this dashboard, show you how to use it in a very basic way, and then kind of give you a sense for what sorts of indicators you can find and use with this online tool. So over here is just kind of a quick introduction. There's Luis's contact info. He's the State of Housing guru. So if you ever have questions about the report or the data that's in the report, he's probably your best contact. And then you can also see some of the data sources over here on this left-hand side as well. So this dashboard uses what we call our Kinder CTA boundaries. So those are the neighborhood areas that our team at the Kinder Institute uses and has identified for Harris County. They're meant to be an approximation of neighborhoods that are based on census geographic boundaries. So it's a way that we can look at data that is sort of larger than census tracts, but smaller than counties. And we think of that as sort of neighborhood level data. So we've identified 143 of those in Harris County. And if you ever have any questions about our neighborhood boundaries, you can feel free to reach out to our Kinder HCDC team. I'm the one that would likely respond to you. But you can see a full map here of those neighborhood areas that we use in our analysis, both in our Kinder HCDC dashboard, which I hope that some of you might be familiar with, and also in this state of housing dashboard. So when you know what neighborhood you'd maybe like to look at, you can click up here on this top right corner and type in a neighborhood. So I'm gonna do Cashmere Gardens. As Luis just said, this is a neighborhood where we know there have been compounding damages from Hurricane Harvey, from Winter Storm Uri, from the pandemic. So I'm just gonna use this neighborhood as a demo in light of all of the things that Luis just discussed. So over here is a good kind of place to start when you're using this dashboard, this sort of top right quadrant, or not quadrant, but box here. This kind of gives you a general overview of the neighborhood. So you can see quick indicators that can kind of give you a sense for the size of the neighborhood, the demographics, the various sort of information. So we have population, median household income, we have some race and ethnicity demographics here. We have our population over 65, which can give you an idea of sort of the aging population in this neighborhood. We have population with a disability, poverty level, some education attainment data here, and then some housing related indicators that are quickly available in this box as well. So that's a good place to sort of just get a sense for the general overview of this community before you dive into some of the more nitty-gritty housing indicators. So then we can move over here to this left-hand box, and we can start seeing some of the housing data that we have available in the dashboard. So we have renter occupied versus owner occupied units here. We can see that in Cashmere Gardens, about 56% of the units are renter occupied, 44-ish% of the units are owner occupied. So that can start giving you a sense of some of the dynamics. We have in the next tab here, you just click on these. We have the composition of the housing structures. So we can see that in Cashmere, the majority of the structures are single family detached homes. So that's at about 79%. And then you can sort of hover over these bars to see the other types of housing that comprise the housing stock in the neighborhood. In this next tab, we have occupied units by race and ethnicity. We can see that the majority of the homes here are occupied by African-American folks and Hispanic people as well. And then finally here, we can see the median gross rent. So that can give you an idea of how much a person who is renting in this community is paying each month on their housing costs. So then moving down to this box, our special topics box, we have a few additional indicators as well that speak to some more specific issues. So we can see here that the percent of total residential housing units in the 500-year floodplain in Cashmere is 100%, which should say something about the risks in this neighborhood when it comes to natural disasters like hurricanes or floods, and speaks to some resilience issues that are potentially at play here. The next tab, we have the owner housing burden. So Luis touched on this in his presentation as well, the difference in the issues faced by owners and renters. We can see that about 80% of owners in this neighborhood have costs that are less than 30% of their household income. So that means they're not cost burdened when it comes to their housing costs. we can see that about 16% of homeowners in the neighborhood are paying more than 50% of their household income on their monthly housing costs. And so this kind of starts to give you an idea of that breakdown. And then when we click on the next tab, this is the same information, but for renters. And you can really see the difference between the owner cost burdened numbers and then the renters. So here we can see that about 38% are not cost burdened when it comes to renters in this community. So that means the majority are cost burdened in Kashmir, the renters in this community. So you can start to see the way that that plays out with these numbers here. And then finally, this last box we have, you can see median sales price. So this number is actually suppressed for this community. So we can't see the value for Kashmir. If you look at other neighborhoods, you'll be able to see that number. But then we also have evictions. And so like Luis noted in his presentation, this is pre-pandemic, this is 2019 data, but it can still kind of give you an idea of what's going on in terms of evictions in this particular community. So we can see that the eviction filing rate in Kashmir Gardens was 12.1%, and then the actual eviction rate was about 8%. So that's the data that we have in the State of Housing dashboard. It's really meant to give you kind of a quick overview of some housing facts and dynamics. Over here on the right, if you want to do kind of a deeper dive on any of this, we have our full data library. Like Luis said, our Kinder Urban Data Platform houses all of the data that went into the State of Housing report. So if you're really looking to get your hands dirty with this data, that's where you want to go. And then we also link to the reports, of course, for 2020 and 2021. And then our Kinder Houston Community Data Connections dashboard, which is similarly, it's a dashboard. It has over 100 indicators at the neighborhood level, all related to kind of poverty and disparities in our region. So that's the State of Housing dashboard. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and hopefully we can have a little bit of time for Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, Luis and Katie. I know a lot was shared there and a lot really relevant to individuals, clients, families that everybody's working with and engaging with across their programs and in communities and neighborhoods. So thank you so much. I know you've been, Luis has been great at answering some of the questions in the chat, but if there's, I saw one come in from Amanda. That is there a resource that tells you what has affected a neighborhood to get more rounded view of why the numbers are what they are? So she gives the example of Kashmir Gardens. You mentioned that they were heavily hit by the storms. What other factors affect those numbers? Oh, I think you're muted or your audio is not connected.
Sorry. Yeah, it was on my phone. That's a great question, Amanda. And it's a little too long to answer in chat, but there's no definitive source on that, but I'm going to try to answer this as best as I can. So one is you can kind of glean from the CDC Social Vulnerability Index. I mean, it tells you a little bit of the social aspect of why folks might be more vulnerable. One thing that we've also analyzed in the Winter Storm Uri Resilience Assessment that we hope is published soon, which doesn't have a date. That report, we did a couple of things to look at vulnerability. We looked at the vulnerability of the housing stock itself, and it's hard to get a real number on this in this statistic, but because the appraisal district's data on building quality is kind of lackluster, it doesn't. It's very, it's an eyeball test, so it doesn't do anything about the internal features of a home. But we tried to use some proxy type of indicators along with the appraisal district's ranking of a home's vulnerability to map that. And so I didn't include it in this presentation, but you might be able to see that. And a part of it is the physical aspect, right, of what's happening in a neighborhood. The other part is the social and economic, right? And I think the CDC tells us a little bit about that. Another interesting thing that we are doing in that Winter Storm Uri report is that the county was very interested in us applying. There's a FEMA methodology to assess vulnerability. And we ended up applying that methodology as well as a standalone analysis. It measures composite resilience, but the most interesting thing about this one, and then I'll stop talking, is that it shows linkages between, there are 20 indicators, and we have a composite resilience score for the county for neighborhoods, but it shows linkages between certain vulnerabilities. So if you are age 65 and older, and you know, you might have, you might be more prone to be vulnerable on X, Y, and Z of those 20 indicators, and it shows you the interrelatedness of them. A lot of that data is going to be in the appendix of the report, but we do invite you all to check it out, because I think it also does help to paint a picture of where geographically are, when you isolate those 20 variables and factors, where they're most pronounced, but also how are they related to other vulnerability factors like not owning a car or limited English proficiency, things like that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. You're right. That was a little bit of more of a verbal response than an in the chat response. One more came in from the chat, and then we'll get into our agency spotlights, but please feel free to ask questions, follow-up questions in the chat as well. And this one comes from Paula. She was wondering what was the rate of eviction in 2020. She saw 11% for 2019.
I don't have the exact number. I thought we were somewhere in between the 8 to 12, so that could be right. I haven't seen the latest from the eviction lab. Could be, that's definitely within the realm of possibility.
Yeah, we're working on getting some of that more recent data.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. A lot of little things I didn't realize were in that dashboard while you were walking through the demo. So really great being able to access that quickly and easily. So thank you so much. Please, virtual round of applause for Katie and Luis while we transition into our agency spotlights. So first up is going to be Mary Lawler with Avenue CDC. She is the executive director. There you go. Your screen was up, but you were muted. Oh, now
I was muted. Okay, let me share it again.
Great.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Good to be with you today. I was planning to share a little bit about Avenue and how we use data in our housing work. So Avenue is Houston's largest provider of affordable housing, affordable workforce housing. We're a nonprofit founded in 1991 by residents of the Old Sixth Ward neighborhood with the goal of preserving the diversity of the community. The Old Sixth Ward, even 30 years ago, was a community faced with gentrification pressures and displacement of low-income people, people of color. And so our organization was founded to address that by developing affordable homes and promoting homeownership opportunities. So we have four main activities. We build affordable homes and apartments. We have a family asset building program, which works to help families purchase and maintain their own homes through homebuyer counseling and down payment assistance programs. We have a comprehensive community development program where we're working with residents of a couple of our target neighborhoods and partner organizations on a whole host of initiatives to improve the quality of the community. And finally, disaster recovery. So home repair in the case of hurricanes and winter storms, and financial and basic needs assistance during COVID. So this image shows most of our housing developments. It hasn't been updated with a couple of new ones, but as you see here, most of our developments are located around downtown in the Washington Avenue, near North Side, North Line, East X Jensen, and East End areas. And this slide shows the each one of those little dots represents somebody who purchased a home with Avenue's assistance, or in the case of the yellow dots, people who had their homes repaired, primarily after Hurricane Harvey. So as you can see, we serve families and individuals from throughout the greater Houston metropolitan area. But as I mentioned, each one of those little dots represents a person or a family, and this is one of the families we were able to help after Hurricane Harvey. They were displaced from their home and actually lived in a hotel for almost 2 years until we were able to provide them with financial assistance to be able to get back into a home of their own. So just want to highlight a couple of our housing developments to give you an idea of our work. This is Avenue Place. It's a subdivision of 95 single family homes completed this year. Actually, we built it over a number of years. And these homes were sold to families and individuals at varying income levels between folk who earn less than 80% of area median income, less than 120% of area median income, and market rate. This is located in the near north side neighborhood, so just north of downtown, about near Cavalcade and Irvington Boulevard, if you're familiar with that neighborhood. Just another image of some of one of the homes, one of our home buyers, and the interior of the home. And right next door to Avenue Place is Avenue Terrace, which is an affordable apartment complex with 192 apartments. It was built in 2 phases in 2011 and I think 2019. So a mixed income community, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, serving households earning less than 30% of area median income, 50 and 60% of area median income, and also about 20% of the units are market rate. Avenue does like to have mixed income communities. We think it's a really great model. So now I want to talk about, you've heard a lot from Louis and Katie about the affordable housing challenges in Houston. I'm not going to repeat a lot of that information, but I want to talk about how Avenue uses data to understand those challenges in our community. These are the 4 main challenges that I think we've already touched on previously today, but I want to just dive in a little bit into the data we use. So of course, Houston Community Data Connections is a great source of data for us. We go to it all the time to find out what's going on in the neighborhoods we serve and what's going on more generally in Houston in terms of housing. We love the community profiles, and one of the, Katie didn't share all of the indicators. There are a few more that we like to look at. One of the things we know because of Houston Community Data Connections is in the neighborhood, one of the neighborhoods we serve, the near north side, the housing cost burden is much higher in that neighborhood than it is in the city of Houston or Harris County. So there are comparisons between, the neighborhood you're interested in and the city and county levels for each indicator. So in the near north side, 60% of households are housing cost burdened, which is quite a bit higher than the rate in Houston or Harris County, which is about 47% of households are housing cost burdened, meaning paying more than 30% of their income on their housing. The housing quality challenges. So we do also like to use Understanding Houston. I hope many of you are familiar with that website and data resource. They have information on the 3-county area and really good comparisons between the 3-county Houston area and state and federal and national indicators. So that's another really regular go-to source for us for housing data. And so from Understanding Houston, we know that there are 19,000 homes in the 3-county area that have substandard conditions, meaning they lack complete kitchen and bathroom facilities in their home. So, that is a real challenge. And some of that, of course, is related to the continual disasters we have and just the challenges that low-income people have in maintaining their own homes. Gentrification pressures, the third challenge I've highlighted here. So there are other studies that Kinder has done that are probably on their website still. And one of the ones that was done a few years ago, which was really illuminating on gentrification, looked at the neighborhoods that are already gentrifying in the city, and then the neighborhoods that are at risk of gentrifying in the future. And so that was a really great study for us because it showed us neighborhoods where we might want to look to focus our affordable housing development and affordable housing preservation strategies. So, so that's another great resource from Kinder Institute. And the final challenge that I've identified here is the NIMBY, so not in my backyard. So when Avenue tries to develop new affordable apartment complexes, we frequently run into neighborhood opposition from people who are, afraid of what affordable housing is and don't really understand, frankly, what affordable housing is. So this this slide shows a clip from the Leader, which is a local newspaper, and we were proposing a new apartment building in the Oak Forest neighborhood, 70 apartments for mixed income population. And you probably can't read the comments, but they're talking about how can our roads handle this, kiss all the trees goodbye. Frankly, most of the comments and concerns were really about the residents and, issues like crime, which really, are not associated with affordable housing per se, but that are often perceived to be things that will come with affordable housing. So in terms of, future data that we would love to see at Avenue is more data about what affordable housing, what impact, if any, affordable housing really does have on neighborhoods. What we've seen is that, the impacts are all positive. It does not ruin people's property values. It does not cause increases in crime. And we, I think, need more data and public understanding of what affordable housing is, which is really just, regular housing that working people can afford. So fortunately, after many community meetings in that Oak Forest neighborhood, we were successful in moving forward with our development. This is a rendering of what it'll look like. It's actually almost looks like that now. It's about 60% complete and will be finished in early next year. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is the preservation of existing affordable rental housing. So Louise talked about this a little bit, that most affordable housing in Houston is actually not subsidized housing. It's actually existing apartments, existing homes that happen to be affordable to low and moderate income people. And unfortunately, a lot of that housing stock is at risk of being lost because it's being bought up and either rents are raised or it's actually demolished to make way for more upscale housing that is not affordable. So one of Avenue's primary strategies right now is to preserve the existing affordable housing. So this image is our most recent acquisition of what's called NOAA, Naturally Occurring Affordable Housing. And it's an 84-unit complex in the East Tex-Jensen neighborhood that we purchased earlier this year and intend to maintain as affordable housing for people earning less than 60% of area median income. So now for a commercial break. Avenue's fundraiser starts tonight and continues through tomorrow and Saturday. It's a great silent art auction and party. Please come. And tomorrow night, I think tickets are $35, and Saturday it's actually open to the public for free. So it's at Winter Street Studios, and I'll put the link in the chat. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary. You had a couple of questions in the chat, so I'll let you answer those in the chat while we pivot to our next presenter. You also got some praise too for all the work that Avenue is doing. So thank you so much. And now we're going to hand it over to Covenant Community Capital. So we have Stephen Fairfield, their executive director, and then Vera Lisa Hunter, their asset coach, here to share about their work.
All right, good morning. So my name is Vera Lisa Hunter, and I'm the asset coach at Covenant Community Capital. And Covenant is a nonprofit who focuses on equipping aspirational families, helping them to be able to thrive so that they can acquire affordable housing, access education, manage risk, and build savings for life. We've been doing this for 23 years. And our flagship program, of course, is the IDA, where we match savings where families can save $2,000, and we'll give them $2,000 towards closing costs. Within that, we coach them, we provide credit builder loans, and so far we've matched the savings of almost 1,000 families whose average income when they enroll is $25,000 to buy their first home, or use that money to fund their college or their dependents' college. Beneath the work that you see through the IDA program, there's some other activities that Covenant has done. For example, Covenant actually founded a call center in the beginning of its existence, and now we actually help to create a trucking firm called Great Freights to create living wage jobs. Covenant also formed Raise Texas, which is a statewide asset building organization that has helped to usher in change legislation so that programs like children's savings accounts and prize-linked savings can actually be provided by banks. Covenant has restored over 120 houses of rural homeowners post-Harvey, and Covenant has also developed over 1,000 affordable homes for families and helped other organizations also to create affordable housing. Covenant does use data. We use data to help monitor the relevance of our mission. We looked at a 25-year trend of your typical Houstonian, and you can see that while the income has actually outpaced inflation, but it's actually the cost of housing and college education that has tripled and quadrupled. And that's where we focus our energy. Our energy is on helping families to acquire affordable housing. We also use data to outcome the success of our program. We measure clients when they enroll in our program, when they graduate, and then 5 years out. And as we help clients build assets, we're actually able to see that when clients enroll, they have about a couple of $100s of net worth. But 5 years after they purchase their house, it has become over $66,000 with their net worth. So our program is actually meeting those goals. We also use data to see how storms have impacted our clients. We looked at where our clients lived, and we layered that on top of areas where the storms were impacted. And we were actually able to discover that 8 of our families lived in these flooded areas, and only 3 of which had unmet needs. Now, Stephen actually got in his car right after Harvey and during Harvey to go drive and check on these families. I didn't know his car served as a boat, but it does. And he made it through to make sure that those families got the help that they needed. We also use data to change our operations. We've actually changed our hours based upon surveys that we've done by our clients. We use it to inform our policies and also special programs. We worked with some college interns and they did a survey on food insecurity. And so now we'll be doing a partnership with Houston Food Bank to provide additional services to our clients based on that information. Some of the challenges that we face, like you've already heard, the cost of increase in housing. We've had a lot of investors, of course, who've come in and they've bought up a lot of that naturally occurring housing in our areas. And it's making it very difficult for clients to be able to purchase homes. I can't tell you how many clients I've had to tell me that they've lost out on many bids because investors have come in and offered cash. We also see challenges because of regulatory changes. So that's increased the cost of housing as well. And then also with staff turnover with mortgage lending, and then also changing in the policies of public housing agencies. So there are some challenges with some of the local down payment assistance policies, and also making sure that the assistance is stable is another challenge for our families because they need to be able to plan out for what type of assistance they're going to be able to get. Covenant, we focus upon families who are between 40 and 60% of AMI, and that's a challenge because most of the housing is suited for those between 70 and 120. We know that being focused on clients at the upper level of moderate income creates more numbers, but that actually makes the work that we do so very, very important. Also, we see that the cost of housing has created it very difficult for our families to be able to take care of other costs, such as healthcare and other needs. Some of our big opportunities, we've seen wonderful changes, of course, in the interest rates. We're at near historic lows. And then also, it's kind of a bit of a double-edged sword. An opportunity is actually the interest that we've seen in affordable housing now that the middle class is being hurt. When the middle class hurts, everybody pays attention. So that helps to actually provide more focus upon the need, which affects our families. We are seeing our families' wages increase, which is great, even though we've had a little setback by COVID. And then also we've seen better loan products. We are seeing products that don't charge mortgage insurance. And then also we've seen changes in loan products that accept income-based repayment plans, which is a big deal because many of our clients have a lot of student loans. So those changes in loan products actually helps to make qualifying for a loan and accessing homeownership a little bit easier for our clients, at least on the mortgage lending side. Also, Harvey has been a wake-up call for many of our clients. So now we talk about the importance of keeping and maintaining an emergency fund, they get it. And then in addition to that, many of our clients have been able to use part of their stimulus payment to bolster their emergency funds. All right, so if you all have any questions, please know that Stephen Fairfield, our CEO, is available to answer questions about our program.
Great, thank you. Thank you all so much. Yeah, feel free to put the questions in the chat. We'll continue to, move on to our presentations as well. We have one more to help round us out. So we have Elise Ho. She's with Easter Seals of Greater Houston. She's their president and CEO. Thank you so much for Elise and Stephen.
Morning. I'm going to be quick since I'm at the end of the meeting, but wanted to just highlight an area that we focus on, and we serve military families, veterans, and we also serve people of all ages with any type of disability as well as their family members. For more than 20 years, we've had a home buyer's education and down payment assistance program. And what we found after several years of providing those services, that a lot of people who came to us were not ready to buy a home. So we started expanding our financial coaching services. And if you think about what people with disabilities are facing, they have all of the barriers. Many of our clients have all of the barriers of being a low-income family. But on top of that, they have the issues associated with disability, whether that's a physical or a cognitive or a mental health disability. So they may have transportation issues. They have the NIMBY thing just kind of, punches me in the stomach when I see that on your list of problems, because I know we all face that. People don't want somebody who's mentally ill living near them. So those are our clients. And during Hurricane Katrina, as y'all know, a lot of the New Orleans evacuees came and were in the Astrodome. A lot of the people who went home had a home to go to, had a job to go to. A lot of the people who stayed didn't have anything to go back to. And those were disproportionately people with disabilities or who had a child with a disability. They didn't have adequate housing stock to move back to. They didn't have an income. So we saw a big change in the demographics, particularly around the Astrodome. A lot of families actually decided to move permanently to our area. And we learned that by an analysis of our data. We were really providing early childhood intervention. And we convinced Health and Human Services to give us the zip code of the Astrodome temporarily to provide early intervention. It was really a tool to identify families that were under severe distress because they had a child with a disability and didn't have the supports that they needed. We backed into, I'd like to act like we were really sophisticated and that we're like Kinder and doing a big data analysis, but we kind of back into it. So I had therapists coming to me saying, I went to provide therapy, but the mom couldn't focus because there was no food for the kids. So one of the great things that United Way did in convening post-Katrina and after every disaster since was we began a relationship with the food bank. And it was based on that. Once we kept hearing from staff about families that were hungry, we surveyed our staff. We did some community surveys with a lot of our partners and found out that food security was really an issue for a lot of our families. Many of them were on TANF or had SNAP, but they still didn't have enough food to eat in a halfway healthy way. So we became a food bank partner from that work. Our financial coaching, which kind of grew from the fact that a lot of our families weren't ready to buy a home, has grown significantly. And our emergency assistance work, post-disaster work has grown significantly as well. So whenever we provide emergency assistance to a family, we offer financial coaching. And it's really amazing because we have over 60% of the people that we offer it to actually take us up on it. So they are, I know, Vera Lisa, I know you mentioned that a lot of families post-Harvey realized I need to have a little bit of money. So we have seen the same thing with our clients, that they realize that without any buffer at all, they're going to be in an emergency situation pretty fast. I know people have focused a lot, and I'm so grateful that the conversation has, and I think Kinder has been great about driving this conversation as well, about their disproportionate impacts on low-income people, on people of color. And I just want y'all today, like if I'm queen of the world, what y'all walk away with today from me, is that also includes people with disabilities. The mayor's office for people with disabilities after after Harvey, estimated that over 60% of the people who needed emergency assistance were people with disabilities. Part of the difficulty is definitions. And I know this is super boring, but just hang with me for just a minute. So we have a staff person who's in a wheelchair doing an intake for a client and who also came in a wheelchair. And she did her prescribed list and said, does anybody in the household have a disability? And the woman said no. And so my staff person down looked at her and went, you're in a wheelchair. Definitions matter. And even Social Security has different definitions for what disability is. So a lot of people will not self-identify as having a disability, even though they have severe limitations on their activities of daily living. So as you're working with clients, with low-income clients, find out if there are those needs in the household, because they probably cost money. There are probably resources that they're not accessing. I'm going to give you a quick little success story, so bear with me. We had a family who used our down payment assistance about 3.5 years ago. And his house, there was one earner. His income was $38,203 a year. They bought a $175,000 house. They just sold it, and after paying everything off, they netted $43,000. This is a first-generation American family, so they now have equity. They have generational change in what their family can do. This is really powerful stuff, and I hope that as you consider your work, you consider us as a resource. Just know that we work a lot with people with disabilities. We work with veterans. Marcus, I saw your question about the VA loans. VA does have some amazing loan products for veterans, for low-income veterans. So just know that that's a resource out there. Sometimes we talk people out of them because they don't require any down payment and people get in over their head. I think that's an important part of what we do as housing counselors, financial coaches. But we can help people build generational wealth. It's really amazing, but it gets hard as housing stock becomes harder and harder to find. We also use financial technology. So we have a program, it's a national award-winning program using technology to help people with their physical, cognitive, financial, mental health needs. I'll put the link up there, but we have been so fortunate. We've been part of the Thrive Working Group to use financial technology to help people. It's not good on its own, but it's great in conjunction with support services. So I'll put a link up to our Bridging Apps website. We have a section on fintech. It's great ways to help people learn basics about finances, about credit, about savings. And if we can ever help, please let me know. We do serve people who don't have, we serve low-income families. We're a HUD certified home buyers educator. So we will serve any low-income family that needs help, but we also have a lot of expertise in helping people with disabilities overcome barriers that they face. Let me know if you have any questions. Oh, there went my light.
Great. Thank you so much, Elise. Really appreciate you sharing about your program and the work that you're doing and really how you backed into stuff. I think that's also a great example of sometimes you do have sophisticated tools, but sometimes you just back into things and have that supported by the work that is going on directly from your staff that's working boots on the ground. So thank you so much. Also, please, let's give a big round of applause to all of our speakers, all of our agencies spotlighting all the amazing work that they're doing, especially centered around housing for our neighbors. So thank you. We have some time. Great. We have 10 minutes. So I want to provide an opportunity. If there's any questions for any of our speakers, we have some time. I am going to share screen one more time so you can see while you're thinking of your questions, you can also see what's ahead for Coffee and Quality. We'll have our next one in February of 2022, and this one is on creating and using a CQI plan, so a continuous quality improvement plan. And I will put our feedback form in the chat where you can register for the next Coffee and Quality. If you're interested in the learning cohort, the online application as well. So I have all those linked. Hopefully that gave you time to think of a question, or if you had anything kind of lingering you wanted to ask. We have plenty of time. Yep. Okay, not seeing anything come in. But there were questions asked throughout in the chat, so it's always great to see that, get your question while it's top of mind. Okay, so we have one question that came in from Catherine. Is there a place that lists the different housing programs for financial coaches? Great question.
Yeah, we can get you a list. We'd be happy to do that. And all of Avenue's contacts and the other groups working in this area will be included. There's a really wonderful pool of talent here.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. We can make sure we share that out along with the different presentations. We'll be able to share that out and the recording from today as well, so you can go back and reference it. A lot of great information was shared today. I know I'm still kind of processing some of it myself. Some great comments in the chat on bringing individuals with disabilities, the importance of that population to light. So thank you so much, Elise.
Jessica, if some of our team was invited to the coffee and quality, can they put their email addresses in the chat so they can be, I forwarded them my invite. Can they put their information in the chat so that they can be sent the information when you send it out?
Yes, please do. Please put your email in the chat. Make sure I get that. I saw a lot of Rolanda's join in. I was like, man, she's on her computer, her phone.
Just because, well, no, because we have a practically new team. And so I thought that this was always very informative for me. So I wanted to invite them. And then I realized after one of them called me that my name is showing up for them. So I said, change your name. But I wanted to make sure that they can, get the invite themselves. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Another great question about, are there housing collaboration discussion groups or info for nonprofits? Oh, Mary, your hand went up.
Yes, there is. There is a organization called the Houston Housing Collaborative, which has been around for a couple of years. It's actually nonprofits, for-profits, individuals, community groups that are just all interested in affordable housing. And the goal of the collaborative is to promote a comprehensive housing plan for Houston. Harris County is working on a comprehensive housing plan. We would also love the city of Houston to work on a comprehensive housing plan to really, identify the challenges and come up with a really good plan to address them with accountability. So I can put into the chat a link to that contact information for that organization.
Great, thank you so much. Great way for people to get connected and follow up on this topic. And then another question came from there, Lisa. If Kinder can provide data on where affordable housing units have been created or developed in Harris County, rentals and for purchase?
Yes, I would love to see which neighborhoods where affordable housing is actually being developed, not only multifamily units, but especially those for purchase. So those single family houses that are for sale.
Luis, I'll let you take that one since your team is doing most of the affordable housing related work.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think a lot of what we used in this study, in this report's census data, we do have some market data, but it quickly changes. And I think we haven't focused on sharing or mapping it as a take of like where you might find affordable entry-level housing. I'm going to think about that one to see how we fold that into future state of housing reports. The one, I think there's a couple of other resources that do, where folks can find this, and I would recommend checking out both the Houston Community Land Trust and the Houston Land Bank. Both are entities that are working really hard to repurpose abandoned or vacant parcels and bringing affordable homes into the area. I would start there, and then I think we're also going to try to see, because we do have some market data, and I'm going to explore to see how we might include them in future state of housing reports, because I think that is an interesting thought that we hadn't thought about. So thanks for the question.
So it will be helpful for our families because we really encourage them to do their market research early, for them to kind of know where houses are, if those areas are a good fit for them. And so we try to stay on top of where the programs are. We do have a partnership with the CLT, but being able to find out where all these different programs are coming from is something that I would like to know more of. And just in general, what has been created, since this is an issue for our clients, where are these opportunities, where have they historically been actually been used?
I think another on this topic, this is also an interesting question because I'm putting my non-researcher hat and as just a lay person who's also looked for housing. That's one thing that I've always been curious about too, is even all of the different programs that are out there. One way is to talk to the housing collaborative, but also as the county rolls out its study, it's how do a lot of folks that are working in this space do a better job of combining their data and sharing that, because some of it is market data, right? Like we can buy market data and put it out there, but again, it changes pretty quickly. But there's a lot of work that nonprofits are doing, housing nonprofits and workforce development housing, or what we call mission-driven housing developers, which are trying to provide affordable housing. There's a lot around like how all of the different groups might unite and share the data and put it somewhere. So I've always been curious about that because as a Spanish speaker, as a native Spanish speaker, I have felt that a lot of people who I know who want to look for housing struggle to find housing because they don't even know that these programs exist, right? And so they just end up kind of relying on market affordable housing, where in reality there are a lot of these programs out there and just folks don't quite know that they exist.
Yeah, I know the city
So
has
a lot of work to be
website.
done on this, but yeah.
Yeah, the city has a website, but there are only 3 programs on that site.
And we know there's a lot more on this. So yeah, maybe it's something, interesting to bring up to the Housing Collaborative, because there's a lot of great organizations too in that forum. And just food for thought, Mary, as we, continue to talk through about some of this stuff.
Thank you.
Great, a lot of opportunities and even some additional support to Verilisa's question coming through the chat of how important that would be. So glad that's being lifted up. We have a minute left, so if there's anyone with a last burning question that they'd like to get in before we end our time here together. Again, thank you.
This is Catherine. I was just going to ask Luis if maybe he could just start a list of what data might be helpful to have on that share, thing that he mentioned as something that might be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something we can continue to talk about. I'll talk to Alan Watkins, who heads the collaborative, because they may already have some resources put together, and it wouldn't be a bad idea for us to either feature that in our student housing report or figure a way to make that a little more accessible and build on it.
Thank you so much.
Great. Well,
thank you all. We're really grateful.
Great. Well, again, thank you all so much for your time. Thank you for joining, listening, participating. Thank you to our presenters. We hope everyone has a great rest of your day, great rest of your month. And thank you. Hope to see you at our next one in February of 2022.
All right.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks, and thanks to all the speakers.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jessica.
Thank you all so
Avon.
much.